Hello there. Welcome and welcome back to the Bible study. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tyler. I've been reading a chapter out of the book of Luke every day. Today we'll be reading Jesus handed over to Pontius Pilate. Pilate faces Herod, Barabbas, the king on the cross, and Jesus dies on the cross. So we'll be reading about the crucifixion itself today. Before we get into that, I've been trying to share something, before we start reading. I don't really think I have anything to share right now. I didn't really think of anything to share, but I don't know. I don't really have anything. Yeah, I don't really have anything. Today I have the opportunity to go hang out with my girlfriend, who has been joining us in our Bible study every day that I've uploaded. And if it weren't for her, I would be very undisciplined with my readings and my uploads. So a big thank you to her. And she has been watching every day since I started reading Mark, because I read Mark, every chapter of Mark, every chapter of John, and so far every chapter of Luke. Tomorrow will be our last reading of Luke, and then we'll be moving on to Acts, by the way. But she's been with me every video, tuning in. So even if only one other person or you show up to, join me and join us, we will always have her there, because she's always there. My family knows I make these videos, but they don't watch them. My friends know I make these videos. They don't. I mean, it's not about watching. It's about joining and reading the Bible. But they don't join us. My friends don't join us. My co-workers don't join us. They all know that I do this. It's only her. And it's truly a blessing. She's a great helper and great motivator. Very wise, too. I appreciate her, and I love her very much. That's really all I have to share. So just big thank yous to her. If you want to, send a message to her in the comments, she reads them all. Yeah, show her some appreciation. That would be fantastic. Without further ado, let's get into Luke 23. Jesus handed over to Pontius Pilate. Then the whole multitude of them arose and led him to Pilate. And they began to accuse Jesus, saying, "We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." Pause. Back to the chapters previous, where they ask him if it's lawful. This is what they were trying to get him at. Trying to get him as a rebellious leader leading an uprising. But he wasn't. And a lot of Jewish people nowadays who don't believe Christ is the Messiah, even though Isaiah chapter 53, which is in the exact same book that they read, exists, they just skip over it and say that Jesus was just a rebellious leader trying to lead an uprising, and then he was killed for his troubles. No, they're wrong. They're obviously deceived. But we're going to resume at verse 3. Then Pilate asked Jesus, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answered him and said, "It is as you say." So Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no fault in this man." But they were more fierce, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place." When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked the man if the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time. Now when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad, for he had desired for a long time to see him, because he had heard many things about him. And he hoped to see some miracle done by him. Then he questioned Jesus with many words, but he answered nothing. And the chief priests and scribes stood vehemently accused him. Then Herod, with his men of war, treated Jesus with contempt and mocked him, arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Pilate and Herod became friends with each other, for previously they had been at enmity with each other. Then Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said to them, "You have brought this man to me, as one who misleads the people. And indeed, having examined him in your presence, I have found no fault in this man concerning those things of which you accuse him. No, neither did Herod, for I sent you back to him. And indeed, nothing deserving of death has been done by Jesus. I will therefore chastise him and release him, for it was necessary for him to release one to them at the feast, or the Passover." And they all cried out at once, saying, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas," who had been thrown into prison for a certain rebellion made in the city, and for murder. Pilate, therefore, wishing to release Jesus, again called out to them. But they shouted, crying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Then he had said to them a third time, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found no reason for death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go." But they were insistent, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified. And the voices of these men and of the chief priests prevailed. So Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they requested. And he released to them the one they requested, who for rebellion and murder had been thrown into prison. But he delivered Jesus to their will. Now as they led Jesus away, they laid a certain man, Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming from the country, and on him they laid the cross, that he might bear it after Jesus. And a great multitude of people followed him, and women who also mourned and lamented Jesus. But Jesus, turning to them, said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For indeed the days are coming in which they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, wombs that never bore, and the breasts which never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do these things in the green wood, what will be done in the dry?" There were also two other criminals led with him to be put to death. Pause. Pardon me there. In the New King James Version, which I am reading, Luke, as I've said before, Luke's a bit difficult to read. You can tell that he is a more knowledgeable and well-studied man. And it also gives further proof that each gospel is written by a different person, because Matthew, Mark, and John would not have written this in this way. Verse 32 in the New King James says, "There were also two others, criminals, led with Jesus to be put to death." Now, in my basic American education, I would have written it as, there were also two other criminals, instead of "there were also two others, criminals." I mean, neither of them are wrong. It's just how my brain has been trained to read things. That's just how I would have written it. But anyways, resuming at 33. "And when they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified Jesus and the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then Jesus said, 'Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do.' And they divided his garments and cast lots, and the people stood looking on. But even the rulers with them sneered, saying, 'He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ, the chosen of God.' The soldiers also mocked him, coming and offering him sour wine, and saying, 'If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself.' And an inscription also was written over Jesus in letters of Greek, Latin, and Hebrew." We're going to pause. So think of Satan, or the devil, speaking through these men as they were mocking him, saying, "Save yourself," and things like that. This is Satan's attempt to get Jesus to bring himself off the cross, to negate salvation for all of mankind. because Satan does not want salvation for all of mankind. So he's been trying so hard to prevent it from happening, and these are his last-ditch attempts to get Jesus to come off the cross so he doesn't pay the penalty for our sins. And also, in 38, it says an inscription was written in Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. Pilate himself wrote this inscription. And this is evidence enough that Pilate is also a very well-studied and educated man, because he knows three languages, including Hebrew, which is a very difficult language to learn. But we're going to resume at the end of 38. It is written, "This is the King of the Jews." Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." But the other answering rebuked him, saying, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Now it was about the 6th hour, and there was a darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. And when Jesus had cried out with a loud voice, he said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. So when the centurion saw what had happened, he glorified God, saying, "Certainly this was a righteous man." And the whole crowd who came together to that sight, seeing what had been done, beat their breasts in return. But all his acquaintances and the women who followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching these things. Now behold, there was a man named Joseph, a council member and a good and just man. He had not consented to their decision and deed. He was from Arimathea, a city of Jews, who himself was also waiting for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a tomb that was hewn out of the rock, where no one had ever lain before. That day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew near. And the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed after, and they observed the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and fragrant oils, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the commandment. Well, that was the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, written from Luke. Personally, I feel Luke has a lot more detail than the other accounts, but it's still impactful all the same. Let me know what you think. Thanks be to God for his salvation. And I thank you again to my girlfriend, whom I love very much, and I'm sure she would appreciate it if she was recognized, because, well, we wouldn't be here without her, really, and without God as well. Your presence in our community, reading with us, is a blessing from God, so I thank you. And tomorrow is the last chapter of Luke 24, so until then, we'll see you.